High Admiral Vexterra stood before the massive holo-display, her crystalline appendages dulled with exhaustion as she watched another colony world fall to the swarm. The Alliance Command Center, carved deep within the crystalline moon of Centauri Prime, buzzed with the frantic activity of a dozen different species working in desperate coordination. "Third Fleet is lost, Admiral," reported Commander Jin, his feathered crest flattened against his skull. "The swarm adapted to our phase shift technology. They were waiting for us." Vexterra's outer membrane pulsed with suppressed rage. The swarm had been unstoppable for the past 3 cycles, consuming world after world, adapting to every weapon and strategy the Alliance deployed. They were running out of options, and more importantly, running out of time. "Show me the casualty reports," she ordered, bracing herself for the worst. The numbers scrolled across the display. Millions dead, dozens of ships lost, and another defensive line breached. The swarm would reach the core worlds within weeks at this rate. A commotion at the command center's entrance drew her attention. Senior archaeologist Krenlow burst in, his normally pristine academic robes disheveled, clutching a data crystal as if his life depended on it. "Admiral, you need to see this immediately," he gasped, his 4 eyes wide with excitement. "We've found something that could change everything." Vexterra gestured impatiently. "We're in the middle of a crisis, archaeologist, unless you've discovered an ancient superweapon." "Better," Krenlow interrupted, plugging the crystal into the holo display. "We've found the humans." The command center fell silent. The word human rippled through the room like a forbidden curse. Every species in the Alliance knew the stories. The savage warriors who had fought their way onto the galactic stage centuries ago, only to vanish into self-imposed exile after their great civil war. The display shifted to show a massive structure embedded in the red rocks of Mars, a planet in the Sol system that the Alliance had long considered abandoned. Sensor readings scrolled alongside the image, showing power signatures and defensive systems far more advanced than anything in historical records. "They never left," Krenlow explained, his voice trembling with excitement. "They just went silent, developing their technology in isolation. And they've been watching us, watching everything." Vexterra studied the data with growing interest. "You're certain this facility is active?" "More than active," Krenlow brought up another display. "They've been running combat simulations. Their military technology, their tactical systems, they're centuries ahead of where they were when they withdrew from galactic society." And he hesitated. "They'd been monitoring the swarm's advance." Commander Jin chittered nervously. "The humans were unstable, unpredictable. That's why they were quarantined. To even suggest. We're out of options." Vexterra cut him off. She stared at the image of the Mars facility, remembering the historical accounts of human warfare. They didn't fight like the other species, didn't follow the normal rules of engagement. Where Alliance military doctrine focused on efficiency and precision, humans had been chaos incarnate, employing strategies that seemed suicidal until the moment they proved brilliant. "Prepare a diplomatic vessel," she ordered. "Small crew, minimal weapons. Let's not appear threatening." "Admiral," Jin protested. "The Council. We'll have to accept it," she finished. "We've tried everything else. If the humans have spent centuries preparing for war while we pursued peace, they might be our only hope." The diplomatic vessel, sleek and gleaming, descended through the thin Martian atmosphere 2 days later. As they approached the coordinates of the human facility, massive doors ground open in the rusty soil, revealing a docking bay that could have housed the entire Alliance defense fleet. A single human stood waiting as they landed, tall, clad in powered armor that made even the Alliance's best combat suits look primitive. The helmet retracted, revealing an aged face with sharp eyes and gray hair. "I'm General Sarah Chen," the human said in perfect galactic standard. "We've been expecting you." Vexterra stepped forward, her diplomatic training warring with her shock. "You know why we're here?" Chen's smile was grim. We've watched the swarm devour your outer colonies for the past 3 years. We've analyzed their patterns, their adaptations, their weaknesses. We knew you'd come eventually. And, will you help us? The human general's eyes hardened. The swarm is a threat to all sentient life. We've spent centuries preparing for exactly this kind of war. The real question, Admiral, is whether the Alliance is ready to fight the way we fight. As if to emphasize her words, a deep rumble shook the facility. Massive hangar doors slid open, revealing rows of warships unlike anything in the Alliance database. Angular, aggressive designs bristling with weapons that defied conventional military doctrine. "Welcome to Mars Command," Chen said. "Let's talk about how to win a war." Looking at those ships, at the cold determination in the human's eyes, Vexterra felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. The Alliance had sought help from humanity, expecting to find warriors. Instead, they had found something far more dangerous: soldiers who had spent centuries preparing for this exact moment. The war was about to change, and the swarm had no idea what was coming for them. General Chen led the Alliance delegation through Mars Command's war room, a cavernous chamber where holographic displays showed real-time tracking of both swarm and Alliance fleet movements. Admiral Vexterra noticed how her junior officers flinched at the casual efficiency with which humans monitored their supposedly secure military channels. "Your encryption was good," Chen commented, noting their discomfort. "We just had 3 centuries to break it." The war room buzzed with activity as human operators coordinated with satellite networks that the Alliance hadn't even detected. Massive screens showed quantum probability maps of swarm movements, behavioral analysis models, and weapon effectiveness projections that made the Alliance's best tactical systems look primitive. "Impossible," Commander Jin whispered, his feathers bristling. "Your species was barely achieving fusion power when you withdrew. This level of advancement is what happens when you spend 300 years preparing for war," interrupted a new voice. A tall human female strode into the room, her dark skin marked with the faint traces of old scars. "Colonel Maya Patel, Special Operations, and you'd be surprised what humans can achieve when we're properly motivated." Chen gestured to a central holotable where a replay of the Alliance's latest defeat was playing out. "You've been fighting the swarm like you fight conventional enemies, with established tactics, predictable strategies, and a focus on minimizing casualties. That's why you're losing." Vexterra's outer membrane rippled with indignation. "Our military doctrine is based on centuries of refined combat theory. Theory doesn't mean shit when your enemy adapts faster than you do." Patel cut in, manipulating the hologram to zoom in on swarm behavior patterns. "The swarm operates on evolutionary algorithms. Every time you use the same tactic twice, you're just teaching them how to counter it." "Then how do you propose we fight them?" Jin demanded. Chen's smile was cold. "Like humans, unpredictably, irrationally, and with absolutely no regard for conventional military wisdom. Maya, show them Operation Thunderhead." The hologram shifted to show a massive space station, one of the Alliance's primary shipbuilding facilities, lost to the swarm 3 months ago. As they watched, a single human vessel appeared, broadcasting Alliance distress signals. The swarm ships moved to intercept, their formations exactly matching Alliance tactical predictions. Then the human ship did something that made Vexterra's scientific training scream in protest. It initiated a controlled quantum core breach, but instead of exploding, it created a localized time dilation field. In the fraction of a second before the field collapsed, dozens of human warships emerged from stealth, their weapons tearing through the temporarily frozen swarm ships. "Impossible," Jin repeated, "but weaker this way. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical," Chen agreed, "unless you've spent 3 centuries figuring out how to harness quantum uncertainty as a weapon. We call it chaos theory applied to practical combat." The display shifted again, showing dozens of similar engagements. Human ships using tactics that violated every principle of space combat, diving into gas giants to use their magnetic fields as weapon accelerators, deliberately triggering solar flares to create navigational hazards, and deploying weapons that seem to ignore the laws of physics. "Your people fight like they're immortal," Vexterra observed. "These tactics, the casualty rates must be horrific." "Actually, they're lower than yours," Paddle brought up comparative statistics. "When you're willing to take calculated risks that the enemy can't possibly predict, you end up losing fewer ships than in conventional engagements. The swarm can't adapt to what they can't understand, and they definitely can't understand human insanity." A new alarm blared through the command center. One of the human operators called out, "General, swarm forces have broken through the Arcturus defense line. They're heading for the Alliance core worlds." Chen turned to Vexterra, her expression grave. "Time for a decision, Admiral. Are you ready to let us fight this war our way?" Vexterra looked at the tactical displays, at the advancing swarm fleets that had seemed unstoppable just days ago. Then she looked at the humans, at their confident stance, and the gleam in their eyes that spoke of centuries spent preparing for exactly this moment. "What do you need from us?" "Full tactical integration with your remaining fleets," Chen replied immediately, "and permission to deploy our special operations teams throughout Alliance space. We've developed some unconventional solutions to the swarm's adaptive capabilities." As if on cue, a massive hangar door opened at the far end of the command center. Rows of powered armor suits stood ready, each one a masterpiece of human engineering. But it was the weapons they carried that caught Vexterra's attention. Devices that seemed to blur at the edges, as if reality itself was uncertain about their existence. "Quantum uncertainty rifles," Paddle explained, patting one of the weapons. "The swarm can't adapt to what technically doesn't exist until it's fired. We've got plenty more surprises like that." "One condition," Chen added, her voice hardening. "Once we commit to this fight, we do it our way. No interference from Alliance Command, no second-guessing our tactics. You came to us for help. Now you need to trust us." Vexterra looked at Chen, saw the same realization in his eyes. They had spent so long fighting according to established principles that they had forgotten what it meant to truly wage war. The humans hadn't just advanced technologically during their isolation. They had evolved into something new, something that might just be exactly what the galaxy needed. "Agreed," Vexterra said, her voice firm. "Whatever you need, whatever it takes, just help us stop the swarm." Chen's smile was fierce. "Colonel Patel, prepare the fleet. It's time to remind the galaxy why humans were feared in the first place." As alarms began to sound throughout Mars Command, Vexterra watched the humans spring into action with practiced efficiency. They moved like predators unleashed, and for the first time since the swarm appeared, she felt something more than hope. She felt the certainty of victory. The war was about to change, and the swarm was about to learn why humans had spent 3 centuries preparing in isolation. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to remind the galaxy that sometimes the most dangerous species are the ones that choose to stay hidden until the right moment. The time for hiding was over. The warriors of Earth had risen again, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Arcturus system blazed with weapons fire as the combined human alliance fleet engaged the swarm. From her command post aboard the human dreadnought Hyperion, Admiral Vexterra watched with a mixture of horror and awe as General Chen's forces demonstrated exactly what 3 centuries of isolated military development looked like in action. "Target cluster approaching Sector 7. Colonel Patel's voice cut through the tactical channel. "Initiating Operation Broken Mirror." 3 human vessels, each smaller than a standard Alliance corvette, accelerated toward a massive concentration of swarm ships. The Alliance officers present held their breath, expecting to witness a suicide run. Instead, the ships executed a maneuver that seemed to tear space itself apart. "Quantum entanglement drives. Engage," one of the human operators announced calmly. "Phase separation in 3, 2, 1. The 3 ships suddenly existed in multiple states simultaneously, their quantum uncertainty field expanding to encompass the entire swarm fleet. In the space between moments, each possible position of the human ships became real, creating a maze of temporal echoes that confused the swarm's adaptive algorithms. Fire solutions calculated, Patil announced. Execute. The Alliance fleet's conventional weapons, precisely timed to the human attack, tore through the disoriented swarm ships. Weapons fire struck targets that couldn't decide where they were in spacetime, their adaptive shields useless against an attack that violated causality itself. By the first stars, Commander Jin whispered, his feathers trembling. They've weaponized probability. General Chen's voice was grim with satisfaction. 300 years of theoretical physics applied to warfare, Commander. Sometimes the best way to beat an adaptive enemy is to break the rules they're trying to adapt to. The battle continued to unfold like nothing Vexterra had ever witnessed. Human ships moved in patterns that defied conventional tactics, their technologies seamlessly complementing Alliance firepower. Where the Alliance brought precision and coordination, the humans added chaos and unpredictability. Swarm reinforcements detected. An Alliance sensor operator reported. They're adapting to the quantum interference pattern. Right on schedule, Chen replied, and Vexterra could hear the smile in her voice. Colonel Patel, initiate Phase 2. From the shadow of Arcturus's largest gas giant emerged a new wave of human vessels, massive carriers that began launching what appeared to be clouds of metallic dust into space. Nanite swarms, Patel explained as Vexterra watched in fascination. Programmed to exploit the swarm's adaptive nature, the more they try to evolve countermeasures, the more vulnerable they become to the base code we've hidden in the adaptation protocols. The effect was devastating. The swarm ships that engaged the nanite clouds began to malfunction, their biological components turning against their mechanical parts as the microscopic machines rewrote their fundamental programming. This is impossible, Jin protested, though his voice held a note of hope. The swarm's adaptive capabilities have defeated every cyber weapon we've developed. That's because you tried to overpower their adaptations, Chen explained. We learned to use their evolution against them. Sometimes the best way to win isn't to be stronger, it's to be smarter. As if to demonstrate her point, a wing of human fighters executed a maneuver that briefly accelerated them past light speed, appearing simultaneously at multiple points around a swarm dreadnought. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, each shot striking from an angle that existed outside normal spacetime. The swarm vessel, unable to adapt to attacks that violated causality itself, shattered into fragments that burned in Arcturus's light. Alliance fleet, Chen's voice carried across all channels. Prepare to advance on my mark. The swarm's adaptation protocols are compromised. Hit them with everything you've got. The combined fleet surged forward, human chaos tactics perfectly synchronized with Alliance precision strikes. Ships danced through space in patterns that would have been impossible just days ago, their crews learning to trust in strategies that defied conventional wisdom. As she watched the battle unfold, Vexterra realized that this was more than just a victory. It was a revolution in warfare. The humans hadn't just brought new weapons to the fight. They'd brought a new way of thinking about combat itself. Multiple swarm signatures going dark, Patel reported. Their command and control network is collapsing. They're actually retreating. A cheer went up through the Alliance crews, but Chen's voice cut through the celebration. Don't get too excited. This was just one battle, and the swarm will try to adapt to everything they've seen today. We need to keep innovating, keep surprising them. How? Vexterra asked. You've already shown us technologies that shouldn't be possible. Chen's laugh was cold. Admiral, what you've seen today is just the beginning. We spent 3 centuries preparing for this war. Every time we showed the swarm a new trick, we were holding 3 more in reserve. That's the real secret to fighting an adaptive enemy. Always keep them guessing. As the fleet regrouped and began securing the system, Vexterra studied the battle data. The humans had just rewritten every rule of engagement she'd ever learned, and somehow she knew this was only the start. The swarm had finally met an enemy they couldn't adapt to, because you can't adapt to an opponent who refuses to fight by any rules at all. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. And somewhere in the depths of space, the swarm was already trying to understand what had just happened, not realizing that their very attempt to adapt was exactly what the humans had been counting on. The game had changed, and the humans were writing the new rules with every impossible victory they achieved. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes moved through the corridors of Alliance Central Command with practiced ease, her cybernetic eyes scanning every shadow, every face, every seemingly innocent interaction. 3 months of joint operations against the swarm had taught the Alliance to trust human military prowess, but they still hadn't learned to appreciate human paranoia. "You're making the other delegates nervous," Admiral Vexterra noted as she fell into step beside Hayes. The humans' constant vigilance had become legendary among Alliance personnel. "Good," Hayes replied, her augmented vision picking up subtle biochemical markers in the passing crowd. "Nervous people pay attention, and something here doesn't feel right." The victory at Arcturus had turned the tide of the war, but the swarm's subsequent behavior troubled Hayes. Their attacks had become more precise, more targeted, as if they knew exactly where Alliance defenses would be weakest. "General Chen's report, Lieutenant," Vexterra asked as they entered her private office. Hayes activated a quantum encryption field, standard human protocol that still made Alliance tech experts wince. "The analysis of recent swarm attacks confirms it. They're not just adapting to our tactics anymore. They're anticipating them." Vexterra's crystalline appendages dulled with concern. "That's impossible. The battle plans are secured with our highest-level encryption." "Which means," Hayes said grimly, "the leak isn't in your communications. It's in your command structure." The words hung in the air like a physical threat. The idea that the swarm could have infiltrated the Alliance's highest levels seemed unthinkable, but humans had spent centuries thinking about the unthinkable. "Show me," Vexterra demanded. Hayes projected a holographic display from her augmented eyes. "Pattern recognition analysis of the last 12 swarm attacks. They're not just hitting military targets. They're striking at exactly the right moment to disrupt specific command chains, targeting officers who know particular classified protocols." She highlighted several instances where swarm forces had bypassed obvious military targets to eliminate key personnel. "They're not fighting to win battles anymore. They're surgically removing threats to their intelligence network." "If what you're suggesting is true," Vexterra began. "It's worse than you think," Hayes interrupted, bringing up new data. "We've been running quantum resonance scans on all Alliance facilities. Look at these biological markers." The display showed microscopic anomalies in cellular structures, subtle enough to fool standard medical scans, but obvious to human paranoia-driven detection systems. "Some of your people aren't your people anymore," Hayes said softly. "The swarm hasn't just infiltrated your command structure. They've replaced parts of it." Vexterra's outer membrane pulsed with shock. "How many?" "We've confirmed 12 so far, all in positions of strategic importance. But there could be more. The infiltration is sophisticated, bioengineered duplicates with access to their templates' memories. They probably don't even know what they are." "How do we?" A distant explosion rocked the building, cutting off her question. Hayes moved instantly, her augmented reflexes deploying a personal shield around both of them as emergency alerts blared. "Multiple detonations detected," an Alliance AI announced. "Security protocols compromised. Command center lockdown initiated." Hayes' quantum comm crackled. "This is General Chen. The infiltrators are making their move. All human personnel, execute Protocol Omega. Alliance forces, trust no one until they've been cleared by human scan teams." Through the chaos of alarms and explosions, Hayes could hear weapons fire in the corridors. Her tactical display showed Alliance security forces engaging each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe. "Your office is secure," Hayes told Vexterra, "but we need to move." The quantum resonance field I'm generating will identify any infiltrators, but it has limited range. How did we miss this? Vexterra demanded as they moved toward a secure exit. Our screening protocols were exactly what they expected you to use, Hayes explained, her cybernetic eyes scanning continuously. You've been fighting the swarm for years, thinking you understood them. But humans, we spent centuries imagining every possible way an enemy could destroy us. Paranoia isn't our weakness, Admiral. It's our strength. They reached a junction where 3 corridors met. Hayes raised her hand, stopping Vexterra as her quantum sensors detected movement ahead. Council member Jin, Vexterra called out as the familiar figure emerged. Thank the stars you're safe. Hayes's weapon fired before Vexterra could finish speaking. The blast caught Chin in the chest, and his form seemed to ripple, biological camouflage failing to reveal something distinctly non-Alliance beneath. How did you know? Vexterra whispered, staring at the twisted form that had once appeared to be her trusted colleague. His neural patterns were too perfect, Hayes replied, already moving them toward another exit. Real people have subtle irregularities in their thought patterns. The duplicates are too clean, too orderly, like a computer trying to simulate consciousness. Throughout the command center, similar scenes were playing out. Human operators, their enhanced senses and paranoid protocols finally proving their worth, systematically identified and neutralized the infiltrators. What had seemed like excessive caution was revealed as necessary vigilance. General Chen, Hayes reported through the quantum comm, infiltrator purge proceeding as planned. The swarm's intelligence network is being dismantled. Good work, Lieutenant. Chen's voice crackled back. Now we know why they've been one step ahead of us. Time to show them what happens when humans fight an enemy they can actually see. As they reached a secure bunker, Hayes couldn't help but smile grimly. The Alliance had spent years fighting the swarm on the battlefield, never suspecting the real war was happening in their own command centers. But humans had never stopped looking for enemies in every shadow. And today, those shadows had finally revealed their secrets. The war wasn't just about military might anymore. It was about trust, paranoia, and the thin line between necessary suspicion and crippling fear. The humans had spent centuries walking that line, and now they would teach their allies how to do the same. Because sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one charging at your front gates. It's the one sitting next to you in the war room, wearing a trusted face and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The bridge of the Hyperion hummed with tension as the combined human alliance fleet approached the swarm's home system. General Chen stood at the tactical display, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic representation of what lay ahead. A vast network of biomechanical structures surrounding a dying star, the heart of the swarm. 300 years, she murmured. We knew this day would come. We just didn't know who we'd be fighting beside when it did. Admiral Vexterra, now bearing scars from the infiltrator purge, studied the tactical display. The Alliance fleet had been transformed by human innovation. Ships retrofitted with quantum uncertainty drives, crews trained in impossible tactics, weapons that defied conventional physics. The swarm is adapting their defenses, Colonel Pottle reported from her command post. They're generating some kind of quantum interference field. They've learned from our previous encounters. Chen's smile was cold. Good. That means they're exactly where we want them. Lieutenant Hayes, her cybernetic systems interfaced directly with the fleet's tactical network, highlighted a pattern in the swarm's movements. They're trying to mirror our quantum uncertainty protocols, but they don't understand the fundamental principle. Which is? Vexterra asked. You can't predict human insanity if you're trying to be logical about it, Chen replied. All ships execute Operation Final Dawn. Show them what 3 centuries of human preparation really looks like. The fleet split into 3 formations, each executing maneuvers that seemed to tear reality apart. Human ships phased in and out of normal spacetime, their quantum drives creating a cascade of temporal echoes that confused the swarm's adaptive algorithms. But this time, the swarm was ready. Massive biomechanical constructs emerged from the system's debris field, their forms shifting and changing as they attempted to counter every human tactic they'd encountered. "They're using our own strategies against us," an Alliance commander reported, his voice tense. "No," Hayes corrected, her augmented vision picking up subtle patterns in the swarm's behavior. "They're using what they think are our strategies. But they've fallen into the oldest trap in human warfare. They're fighting the last war." Chen nodded. "All ships, initiate Phase 2. Lieutenant Hayes, you have tactical control." Hayes's cybernetic systems fully activated, creating a direct neural link between human and Alliance crews. Through her enhanced consciousness, she coordinated movements that no organic mind could have calculated alone. The human fleet's formation suddenly shifted, their quantum drives synchronizing in a way that even the Alliance crews hadn't known was possible. The space between the ships began to ripple, reality itself struggling to maintain coherence. "What are they doing?" Vex Terra whispered. "Something impossible," Chen replied. "Something we've spent 3 centuries preparing for. We're not just going to beat the swarm, we're going to make sure they never threaten anyone again." The human ship's quantum drives reached full synchronization, creating a cascading effect that spread through space like a shockwave. The swarm's adaptive defenses tried to compensate, but they were trying to adapt to something that violated the fundamental laws of physics. "They're attempting to rewrite their base code," Hayes reported, her cybernetic eyes tracking the changes. "But they don't understand. We're not attacking their ships or their weapons. We're attacking probability itself." The quantum cascade reached critical mass. In an instant, the laws of causality around the swarm fleet began to break down. Ships existed in multiple states simultaneously, their adaptive algorithms trapped in an endless loop of trying to evolve responses to events that both had and hadn't happened. "All Alliance ships, full retreat to safe distance," Chen ordered. "What happens next isn't something you want to be close to." As the Alliance fleet pulled back, the human ships maintained their impossible formation. The space around the swarm's home system began to fold in on itself, creating a temporal loop that trapped the entire swarm fleet in a moment of endless possibility. "What have you done?" Vex Terra asked, watching as the swarm's mighty armada became trapped in a prison of quantum uncertainty. "We've given them exactly what they wanted," Chen explained. "An endless series of possibilities to adapt to. They'll spend eternity trying to evolve to counter every possible outcome, never realizing that the outcomes themselves are infinite." The swarm ships, caught in the temporal trap, began to break down. Their adaptive nature, their greatest strength, had become their ultimate weakness. They would continue to exist, but in a state of perpetual change, never able to affect the normal universe again. As the quantum effect stabilized, Chen turned to address the combined fleet. "This was never about winning a war," she said, her voice carrying across all channels. "It was about ending the threat permanently. Humanity didn't spend 3 centuries developing weapons. We spent it developing a prison for a species that could adapt to anything except infinite possibility." The Alliance crews watched in awe as the last traces of the swarm disappeared into the quantum anomaly, trapped forever in a maze of their own endless adaptations. "What now?" Vex Terra asked as the fleet began its journey home. "Your people have changed everything we thought we knew about warfare, about physics, about what's possible." Chen's expression softened slightly. "Now we do what humans have always done. We prepare for the next threat. But this time, we won't do it alone. The galaxy needs both Alliance wisdom and human paranoia. Together, we'll be ready for whatever comes next." As the fleet departed, they left behind a warning beacon near the quantum prison, a message in every known language of the galaxy. "Here lies the swarm, trapped in infinite possibility by human ingenuity. Let their fate be a reminder. Some species choose isolation not out of fear, but to prepare for the moment when they're needed most." The war was over, but humanity's legacy was just beginning. They had emerged from their self-imposed exile, not as the savages the galaxy remembered, but as guardians who had sacrificed centuries of advancement to develop the ultimate defense against an adaptive threat. And in the quantum prison that had once been the swarm's home system, infinite possibilities continued to play out, a testament to the lengths humans would go to protect not just themselves, but all sentient life in the galaxy. The time of isolation was over. The age of human innovation had begun.